If you dive into the freezing waters 900 miles off the coast of Angola, you will find the mangled, rusted bones of a giant. To the marine biologists, it is just an artificial reef. To World War II historians, it is a minor statistic on a long list of Allied shipping casualties. But to anyone who loves a good story, those ruins belong to one of the most stubborn, identity-shifting chameleons to ever sail the high seas. This is the story of a ship that refused to die in the 19th century, became a corporate workhorse in the 20th, ruled the criminal underworld of California as a floating den of sin, and then, in a final, desperate act of wartime necessity, rebuilt itself one last time, only to meet a torpedo in the dark. This is the biography of the Star of Scotland. Our story begins in 1887 in the shipyards of Port Glasgow, Scotland. The world was changing. Steamships were beginning to choke the oceans with black coal smoke, but the era of the great windjammers wasn't over yet. The builders laid down a massive, four-masted steel hull and christened her the Kenilworth. She was beautiful, fast, and built like a fortress. For her first 2 decades, she did exactly what she was built to do: haul wheat, coal, and sugar across the globe under the British flag. But the sea is a fickle mistress. In 1889, while docked in Port Costa, San Francisco, a catastrophic fire tore through her decks. The damage was so severe, she was written off as a total loss. But a savvy American businessman bought the scorched skeleton for cheap, rebuilt her, and successfully exploited a loophole to register her as an American vessel. The ship had survived her first brush with death. It wouldn't be her last. By 1908, the age of commercial sail was truly dying. Most ships of the Kenilworth's generation were being sold for scrap or turned into miserable, unpowered barges. Instead, she was bought by the Alaska Packers Association. This massive canning conglomerate bought up the world's remaining grand sailing ships, painted them with uniform black hulls, and renamed them all Star. The Kenilworth became the Star of Scotland. For the next 20 years, her life was dictated by the seasons. Every spring, she would leave San Francisco packed to the gills with hundreds of seasonal cannery workers, fishermen, and tons of supplies. They sailed north into the brutal, icy waters of Bristol Bay, Alaska. The men worked all summer in grueling conditions, and in the autumn, the Star of Scotland would return, her hold packed with millions of tins of canned salmon. It was hard, unglamorous, blue-collar work. In 1917, the Star of Scotland was taken over by the U.S. Shipping Board and used in the California-Hawaii trade for the duration of the war, after which she was returned to her owners. By the late 1920s, even the Alaska Packers couldn't ignore the efficiency of steam engines. The Star fleet was retired. In 1930, the vessel was sold to Arnold Pierce and Lou Lockhart, Los Angeles, and used as a fishing barge. The 1930s brought the Great Depression, and with it, a desperate American appetite for escapism. Enter Anthony Cornero. The papers called him Tony the Hat. He was a Prohibition-era rum runner, a bootlegger, and a man who saw dollar signs where others saw trash. Cornero bought the rusting Star of Scotland, towed her to Southern California, and spent a fortune gutting her. The cargo holds that once smelled of fish and sweat were lined with mahogany, crystal chandeliers, and plush carpets. He installed craps tables, roulette wheels, slot machines, a massive dance floor, and a world-class restaurant. He renamed her the Rex. Because gambling was illegal in California, Cornero anchored the Rex exactly 3 miles off the coast of Santa Monica, just outside U.S. territorial jurisdiction. Every night, water taxis carried thousands of wealthy Hollywood elites, mobsters, and regular folks looking to strike it rich out to the water gambling ship. The Rex was a printing press for money, pulling in millions of dollars. The authorities were furious, but for years, Cornero just smiled and pointed at the map. He was legally untouchable. Eventually, the state government grew tired of the humiliation. In 1939, California Attorney General Earl Warren declared the gambling ships a public nuisance and launched the Battle of Santa Monica Bay. State officials besieged the ship. Cornero fought them off with fire hoses for days before finally surrendering. The Rex was stripped, silenced, and once again, abandoned. You would think that would be the end of the story. A grand sailing ship turned industrial packer turned floating casino, finally rotting away in a harbor. But then came December 7th, 1941. With the United States thrust into World War II, the military suddenly needed every single piece of floating metal it could get its hands on. German U-boats were sinking Allied supply ships faster than American shipyards could build them. The government looked at the stripped hull of the old casino boat. They saw a survivor. They restored her original name, Star of Scotland. But they didn't just patch her up, they transformed her. They rigged her as a massive, six-masted schooner. She was an absolute anachronism, a 19th century sailing ghost fighting in a highly mechanized 20th century war. In November 1942, under the command of Captain Constante Trasmundo, the Star of Scotland was quietly hauling a cargo of lumber from South America toward South Africa. On November 13th, the past finally caught up with her. Deep in the South Atlantic, the German submarine U-159 spotted the bizarre sight of a six-masted sailing ship on the horizon. The U-boat surfaced. The Germans didn't even waste a torpedo. They simply opened fire with their deck gun, smashing the old ship's hull. As the Star of Scotland began to settle into the water, Captain Trasmundo and his crew scrambled into the lifeboats. The U-boat commander actually pulled Trasmundo aboard the submarine, intending to take him prisoner. But Trasmundo looked the German captain in the eye and told him the truth. His crew were young, inexperienced boys. If Trasmundo stayed on the sub, those boys would die in the open ocean. In a rare moment of wartime chivalry, the U-boat commander released Trasmundo, gave the crew some provisions, and pointed them toward the coast. The survivors set sail for Angola in one lifeboat and made landfall at Santa Maria Lighthouse on the 1st of December, having made a voyage of 1,040 miles. The crew survived. The Star of Scotland did not. She slipped beneath the waves, 55 years after her first launch. The Star of Scotland lived half a dozen lives. She was a luxury merchant, a floating cannery, a den of Hollywood sin, and a warrior. She represents an era when ships weren't just mass-produced, interchangeable tools, but living things, flexible enough to adapt to whatever madness humanity cooked up next.